Chapter 37. A Full Accounting. Second dark day of Queeman, 820. It has taken nearly all of the daylight, but Simbel and I managed to stagger back to Boswin's camp. The effect of the Dark Lord laying waste to our minds creates a fatigue like I've never felt before. At last, we reached the sliver of moss-covered forest along the River Dart. On the final rise, I get chills. Boswin will never be there to greet me again. I always liked this camp, Simbel says. There are so few trees on the moor, yet Boswin managed to have his camp within them without evicting the wildlife. It's the only place I have thought of as home since I left my parents' house. Are you ready? For what? The dangling curtains of moss on the trees look ominous, with only weak rays of light from Boswin's campfire to illuminate our way. As we round the dangling curtain of moss, 50 druids wait patiently. A knowing smile from Simbel is all I get as an explanation. "Make way," he calls in his booming voice. The crowd pulls back at our approach. Several extra stumps have been placed around the fire, and most have been claimed. Before us sit Lords Caradoc, Egan, Morod, Drewston, and even Hedrid. The rest of the druids crowd around the campfire. I know from experience that those in the back will become very cold fast once Belenos sinks below the horizon. "Greetings, lords," Simbel says in an expansive voice. "We are in for an interesting end of the day, it would seem. I present to you the elusive Grami." He bows low to his fellow members of the Nine. He has quite the tale to tell, though I dare say that not even he knows all of it. So, settle in, and let us get to the bottom of this today. Hedrid approaches me. "I hope you don't hold a grudge against me." "Why would I, Lord Hedrid?" "Well, I was a poor host just a few days prior." "Lord Hedrid, I was in a rush to complete my quest, so your actions were exactly what I needed." "This is good of you. We must all be willing to forgive in order to move forward." I'm sure he is trying to tell me something important, but I can't fathom what it could be. I nod as if I understand, and watch as the dumpy little man shuffles back to his seat. Boswin's seat at the fire is the only place open. I can see Belenos framed through the boughs of only 2 yew trees. This was Boswin's secret way of marking time. From his perch, the branches are equally spaced from one another. By watching Belenos sink past each, Boswin could tell within a heartbeat or two of when the new day would begin. I was so proud when I discovered his secret. My eyes begin to water. I force a cough to get myself under control. "Grami," Caradoc says, "everyone's waiting for you to begin your tale." For the first time in my life, there are 200 eyes staring at me, expecting who knows what. I croak out, "Water, please," and the crowd gives a low chuckle. I am given a wooden cup, and I take a quick drink. They are all still staring at me. For my quest, Lord Boswin charged me with finding and bringing back a ghost orchid. I had never heard of such a plant before, and he told me that they are very rare. The only existing flower, known to Boswin, was being kept within Solent Keep. There are murmurs of surprise rippling through the crowd. If nothing else, I've captured their attention. "I must interject here," Caradoc says. "For those who do not know, the ghost orchid is an evil parasitic flower, which, if used properly, can defile the very sites we hold as most holy. I was present at the bestowing of the quest, and I can assure everyone that this information was not shared with Grami. He had no idea why Boswin so urgently wanted this flower retrieved from the Obsidian Mage's Keep." "Neither do the rest of us," Morod says. She looks at Caradoc, waiting for further explanation. The crowd feeds on Morod's confident gaze and calls for more to be said. Caradoc holds his hands up for silence. Indeed, Boswin thought it best not to reveal the magnitude of possibilities while it was in the Obsidian Lord's possession. I believe that only Boswin and I were privy to this information. Drustan and Simbel are demanding to know more from Caradoc. Once again, he raises his arms. Before we lose our way, let's have Grami finish his tale. Then you can tear into my hide, if you must. Before you continue, Simbel interrupts. Did Boswin instruct Grami not to share this information with anyone, including other members of the Nine? Lord Boswin gave me no such order, I cut in. Then you lied about keeping all of this a secret, he demands. I gave the command, Marod says. Caradoc draws away from her, as if he had been struck. Simbel stares in stunned silence. The crowd laughs nervously. He waves his hand in a placating gesture for an explanation. When Grami came to show his proper respects at Keem Verdaris, I asked him of his quest, and I can vouch that what he has revealed so far is the same as he told me over a month ago. I knew of the orchid's possible use, and it was clear that Grami did not. I did not, and still do not know what strategy Boswin wished to employ, so I chose not to interfere. For Grami's protection, I bid him to keep his quest secret from any not already familiar with it. Drustan looks annoyed, and Caradoc is studiously avoiding Marod's gaze. Simbel remains lost in his thoughts. Only Hedrid and Egan are patient, as if listening to a bardic tale. All eyes are once again locked on me. I tell of being cornered by the limping man, and how the dog Crichton sacrificed himself for me. That would be the Dark One's second, Simbel says. He nods his approval. You faced off against the two most powerful obsidian mages on Brittany and lived to tell the tale. You lead a charmed life, it would seem. Charmed? He should know the price that I have had to pay. But now is not the time, so I swallow my bitter rebuke. I take another drink of water to refocus my thoughts. I skip over how the orchid was already turned to stone and the necessary side trip to Venta. Instead, I place the blame on Offswith for stealing it from me. This Offswith is a known thief and a mind controller, Simbel says. I have standing orders to kill him if he should appear on the plains again. I tell of fortuitously meeting Bloxtenius while on the road to Sarum. Do you really think that was a happy accident? Caradoc asks. Indeed, Simbel chimes in. I doubt the meeting was random. I had not considered this possibility. Of being jailed in Sarum, I tell them of my luck to be held with Offswith once again. When we escaped, I made sure to keep the orchid in my possession. It's not quite the truth, but I fear what would happen if everyone knew that I took the flower off of a dead druid's body. I tried to skip over Memmerkov Key, only to have Simbel interrupt me and heap undue praise upon me for my weather casting. I mention being totally drained of my vitality, but I skip over the iron manacles and the trip to Cantum Lijank's Kuros. Egan and Hedrid visibly relax when I avoid mentioning the ceremony at the Long Barrow and the Giant's script. I need to speak again, Caradoc says. He jumps to his feet. It's clear that his craving for attention must be satisfied. It was I who told Grami to be ready to flee if the discussions among the Nine went badly. It was my man, Eosia, and several other druids who were in Grami's company and chose to flee with him. So Loris was right to suspect you, Drustan exclaims. For subverting his will and doing good for the land? Always. All that talk about sedition was just the latest silliness coming from our incapable leader. Who but the daftest among us could have believed that? I believed it, and I still do, Braddon says. Caradoc rolls his eyes. Too easy. That's enough, Hedrid of all people says. He cuts off the heated name-calling that was brewing. Surprised by the diminutive man's outburst, Caradoc sits down and urges me to continue. I linger over the details of Innis Witrin so that my companions can have their heroic exploits memorialized. I tell of the terrible cost to Sephra, Eosia's true leadership, and Arthmael's doomed escape. Egan raises his hand. I fear that Sephra's change will be permanent. We will always try to work with him, but he has made precious little progress. A pall falls over the assembled. I have some good news to report, Simbel announces. Arthmael did not perish, as you believe. He lives? I exclaim. He does. In fact, I was speaking to him when a messenger from Tokar Briwa arrived and informed me that one from my group, named Arthmael, had wandered off while receiving treatment and could not be found. As you may imagine, the two of us found this report to be rather humorous. Lord Simbel, I say, more sharply than I should. In all the time it took us to walk back here, you didn't think to tell me that Arthmael lives? Caradoc laughs his big, booming laugh. Simbel is a bard, Grami. You don't tell the surprise in the beginning of your tale. You wait until the end. The crowd chuckles, and I'm forced to let my ire go. Arthmael is alive. That's what is important. He speaks very highly of you, Grami, Simbel says. You give yourself too little credit at the Battle of the Tor. I believe this is true of your entire tale, but that can wait for another time. The thought of people congratulating me for my series of debacles is too uncomfortable to think about. I dive back into my story and briefly touch on the healing springs before a lump in my throat makes it impossible to continue. After another drink of water, it's still hard to go on. It's all right, lad, Hedrid says. I pace back and forth in front of the fire, vainly trying to recover my composure. It should be said that Grami once again came dangerously close to overextending himself, Egan says. Once we were able to coax him back to his human form, I had him drugged for as many days as I dared, so that he could recover. I give a detailed accounting of how Ysella saved Catel and me at the pond, and how she was captured for her efforts. I see a single tear is running down Simbel's cheek as he nods at Ysella's bravery. There will be a ballad composed in her honour, he says. She was one of my best students. There are scores of druids present, and the only noise comes from the crackling of the fire. It occurs to me that my words alone have caused this. It's intoxicating, knowing that you can make the crowd feel however you want with the properly chosen words. I sense that now is the time to raise those spirits. I check to make sure Catel is not among us. I tell of the ride on the underground rapids, framing it in the most humorous way I can. There are several laughs and smiles all around. I finally understand the power of the bard. Though I don't want to relive it, the story has a life of its own, and I must continue with what happened next. I speak of Ysella's second sacrifice, saving us from certain death. Simbel's tears are there for all to see. Marod is openly weeping as well. I gloss over my river escape for fear that more praise will be heaped upon me. I only slow my tale to describe Girthsid and his men galloping off the cliff and being broken by the rocks below. Simbel stands. This is the menace that the Obsidian Order poses, Simbel says in his husky voice. None are more aware of this than we Plains Druids. He realizes that now is not the time for a call to action, so he sits again. I speak in glowing terms of the care I received from Andrelu. I even confess to taking, then offering his staff to the gods, as well as misleading him at every turn. Andrelu deserves much better, Drustan says. He does, Lord Drustan, and I wish to make it up to him if I am able. Your repayment for our healing is clear enough. I sigh. It seems I am destined to collect powerful detractors no matter what I do. In these trying times, Hedrid says, it is best to forgive one another so that we may face our troubles together. Drewston turns his whole body away from me and the fire. And now we get to the most curious part, Lord Simbel says. There were many, many druids ransacking this area for you. I fear the poor tawny owls around these parts have been harassed so often that they are likely to abandon this area for a time. How did you manage to get back here without being spotted by any of your brethren? I pause for a moment and make them wait. I slowly smile to my audience, waiting for the right moment. It was Blockstenius. I wait a beat for the news to be absorbed. Boswin had sent him to find me, and with his ability to persuade, I tap my head a couple of times, no one paid the least bit of attention to us. I rode in his wagon down the Druid Ditch Road. The crowd murmurs again, this time in disbelief. Indeed, Blockstenius even convinced one druid to give me his staff. I hold up the oaken training staff for all to see. "That's my stave," a voice from the back yells. "Thank you for letting me use it. Please come and reclaim it." The boy excitedly pushes through the crowd. Once he's clear, he notices the hundreds of eyes staring at him and freezes. Knowing that feeling all too well, I go to him and return the staff. Once he takes hold of it, I pull him in tight. In a low voice, I tell him, "Respect this staff, for it has bested a member of the Nine." His eyes grow large, and he searches my face for any deceit. I nod once and release the staff. He quickly melts back into the crowd. When I arrived here yesterday, Lord Boswin accepted the ghost orchid and confirmed me as a druid. It's not the exact truth, but I face each of the lords in turn. If they do not dispute this point, then my status as a druid will stand. "You have completed your quest," Caradoc confirms. "Now, please, finish your tale." I don't want to continue. Despite how it ended, I don't wish to speak ill of Boswin. Caradoc must know why I'm hesitating. "Go on, Grami." Lord Boswin told me of an illness that was killing the moor ponies. Further, he had divined that the disease was coming from the moorhens. He proposed to use the orchid to kill all the moorhens in order to save the ponies. There's a collective gasp from the crowd. I am proud to know that I'm not the only one who knows and respects our ways. Multiple side conversations erupt. "Silence!" Caradoc bellows. His bard training is obvious. He stretches out a hand to me. "Please, continue." I had no choice but to challenge him to a duel. There are more gasps from the crowd, but no one dares raise their voice now. "You challenged a member of the Nine and your own mentor to a duel." Drewston says what everyone is thinking. "I did not have a choice." Drewston has gone pale. A moment of silence ensues, and I hurry to fill the void. Now that I'm committed to the tale, I want it over as soon as possible. "We spent the night here, both hoping the other would see the error of his way. Before first light, Lord Boswin left for Corley Circle. He built a bier of you, to be used afterward." I cough to regain my composure once again. "Lord Boswin insisted that no magics be used during the duel. He even insisted that I remove my Rowan protection amulet. Before we entered the stone circle, he asked a boon of me." I can't stop my voice from getting shaky. Tears fall unheeded, but I dare not stop now. "He asked that if I were victorious, that I place the ghost orchid on his chest and let it burn along with him on the pyre." "My men have flown to Corley Circle," Simbel says softly, "and they can confirm that a pyre of you has been recently burned." I feel relief now. Thanks to Simbel, I've been spared reliving the duel. The worst of my story is over, and I rush to finish the tale. I knew only that my former life was over, and I was at a loss for what to do next. Ysella had given me the protection amulet, so I added it to the pyre, since I never got a chance to mourn her or the rest of my friends properly. This morning, I went to spread some of Boswin's ashes at Black Tor, where I knew the moor ponies would be grazing. From there, I saw the Black Lord riding his horse hard toward me. I was trapped with no place to run or hide. No doubt my removal of the amulet allowed him to home in on me. I turned to Simbel. "Would you finish the tale from here?" I beseech him. "No," he says with regret. "I am but a small part of your greater tale." I exhale. This is harder than I thought. He compelled me off the Tor to gloat face to face. Lord Simbel swooped down behind the Dark Lord, but he was unable to get close enough to strike. Once he had Lord Simbel in his power, he forced me to believe that I had failed. My only option was to walk away and abandon Lord Simbel to his fate. There is not a sound to be heard. Indeed, it feels as if everyone is holding their breath to hear what comes next. To my eternal shame, I turned my back on Simbel and did as the Dark One bid. I left the field. Again, I stop and let the feeling set in. I have the crowd spellbound. It was only divine providence from the goddess Epona that a cult of which I was familiar was nearby. Needing a friend, I went to him. The obsidian mage's grip on my mind faded once the Tor was between us. I used what little power I had to assemble the lead stallion and his harem to charge the cursed one. Simbel jumps to his feet. The horses rounded the Tor, and the pounding of their hooves struck fear in the black mage. Frozen in place, he squandered valuable time and failed to reach his steed. The stallion ended the threat with a double kick to the head. Then, Grami, still with his wits about him, demanded we perform the threefold death so that this menace would never again plague our land. The crowd explodes into resounding cheers. They jump and holler into the night. How could they misunderstand so profoundly? As the bodies of my fellow druids bounce up and down, I manage to catch a glimpse of Hedrid, still sitting in his spot. He nods sympathetically at me, as his eyes fill up with tears. Boswin is gone forever. When this frenzy is over, everyone will realize the utter disaster that I have wreaked. Simbel calls for quiet. Like Caradoc, he has full command of his voice and can easily be heard over the crowd. What our humble Grami isn't telling you is far more than what he has revealed tonight, and it is all to his credit. However, I think we can call an end to this tale and allow the poor man some rest. Not quite yet, Caradoc interrupts. The tale is not over. Caradoc ushers me to my seat before walking to the centre. I gladly take my seat next to Marod. Always has to be the centre of attention, she says softly, shaking her head. Boswin had misled poor Grami in more ways than one. He waits for everyone to settle down. I try to catch his eye, but he won't look at me. Just over a year ago, Boswin diagnosed himself with the wasting disease. He sought Egan's opinion, and I believe Egan concurred. Egan nods. He was impressed by his final student's abilities, so he honed them as best he could in the short amount of time he had left. For many reasons best left unspoken here, he devised this quest for Grami and the false story of the moor ponies when his protégé returned. His hope was that Grami would display his awesome gifts while questing and take his place as a young leader of our society. I want to feel something at these words, but I've become numb from my recital. Indeed, Boswin thought so highly of our hero that he wished for Grami to take his place among the 9. The assembled druids are buzzing by this rhetorical flourish. No doubt Caradoc will be pleased with the reaction it caused. So he gave his student no choice but to challenge him to a duel. By defeating one of the 9 in a fair duel, Grami is to take his mentor's spot and ascend to the High Council. What? I must have heard wrong. This is outrageous, Drewston shouts the words that I am thinking. This man is a criminal. You heard the same tale I did, Lord Drewston, Merod says. Of what crime did you hear? I heard none. He willfully flouted the will of Loris. He destroyed a powerful artifact. He killed one of us. How many more crimes do you need? He stares incredulously at the other lords. Grami, Caradoc calls. Were you ever informed of the fat oaf's wish for you to present yourself to him? Caradoc, show some respect, Merod says. The old fool imprisoned me in my own camp for no cause that he could prove. When Loris accords his fellow members with the respect they are due, then I will be happy to reciprocate. Merod raises her head to the stars, knowing that further discussion is a lost cause. Second, Caradoc continues, would you have preferred that Grami ignore the rules of our order and agree to kill all the moorhens? Since when is it a crime to passionately follow the 3 basic tenets? With the choice Grami was given, would any of us have acted differently? The crowd is silent as the drama unfolds before them. You'll never get the votes, Drewston says savagely. He doesn't need votes, you oaf. You can ascend to the 9 by defeating one of its members in a duel. It is only when a position is vacated that it is filled by the vote of the council. He defeated Boswin. He is of the same rank as you and me. I stare at the assembled lords, trying to process what Caradoc has said. But I screwed up every step of the way. I can't be rewarded for my actions. Did they not just hear my miserable tale? Caradoc puts his arm around me. You are not being rewarded. You are one of the 9. He pats me on the back and chuckles. A red-faced Drewston stands up and points in Caradoc's face. Loris will have him voted off the council. Loris is not a king, Caradoc shouts back. He is one of the 9, like the rest of us. The only difference is that he gets to talk first at gatherings. Drewston and Caradoc are in each other's face, screaming obscenities. It takes several men to pull each one back. Egan is sitting, taking in the whole scene. Simbel is off directing his men to act as heralds and tell everyone what has happened here. It is Hedred who approaches me and grips my hand. I dearly hope that Boswin knew what he was doing. I don't doubt you, but he has thrown you into deep and dangerous waters in hopes that you can swim. Thank you, Lord? He pats my hand to reassure me. How is Catel? I rush to ask before he can leave me. She is recuperating. He looks up at me with his reddened eyes, and I can see that he feels her pain as well. He pats my hand once more and heads off into the darkened woods. I question if Boswin has done you any favour in this, Merod says from behind. I turn to face her thoughtful eyes. Hedred said much the same thing before he left us. In truth, he hates crowds. I was mildly surprised that he made it through the whole telling. You could say the same thing about me and my quest. Indeed. I wish he could have stayed. I look off into the trees. Oh, he hasn't left yet. There is one more thing we must accomplish before we can return to our homes.